All right, let's dive into three of the trickiest, most confusing buzzwords in all of education. They sound so similar, right? And people use them interchangeably all the time. But what we're going to see is that they mean completely different things about how we approach learning. You've definitely heard them thrown around in articles and meetings. Maybe you've even used them yourself. But what really is the difference between personalization, differentiation, and individualization? Well, we're here to cut right through all that noise. I promise. By the end of this, you'll have total clarity on which is which, and more importantly, you'll get why it matters so much. And here it is. This is the secret key to unlocking this whole thing. It's a brilliant insight from the researchers who developed this framework. One of these ideas puts the student in the driver's seat. The other two, they keep the teacher's hands firmly on the wheel. Just hang on to that one thought, learner-centered versus teacher-centered, and everything else is going to snap right into place. So here's our game plan. We're going to break down each term one by one, starting with the one we're probably most familiar with, individualization. Then we'll get into differentiation, and after that, the real game changer, personalization. From there, we'll put them all side by side to really see the difference. And we'll wrap up by talking about why this whole conversation is shaping the future of education. Okay, first up, individualization. The best way to think about this is like a GPS, where every single person is driving to the exact same destination. The only thing that's different is that some people might drive a little faster, and some might take a little more time. But the route and the destination, they're totally locked in. And that's exactly what the formal definition tells us. The learning goals, the what, are identical for everyone in the class. The only thing that flexes is the when, the pace. So a student might get some extra time on a concept they're struggling with, or they might fly through something they get right away. The language here is really, really telling. You see words like accommodates, customizes, and this one, dependent. The system is definitely reacting to what a learner needs, but the student is still completely dependent on the teacher to make it happen. And notice, it's based on seat time, and it uses assessment of learning. We're going to come back to that phrase. So the bottom line, individualization is all about tweaking the timeline. The student is basically a passive recipient getting instruction that's been paced just for them. And that assessment at the end, it's just there to confirm what they know. It's a classic 100% teacher-centered model. All right, let's move on to our next term and see how things evolve a bit. This is differentiation. So let's go back to that GPS analogy. Everybody is still going to the same final destination. But now, the teacher is kind of like a dispatcher, sending different groups of students on different routes. Maybe one group takes the scenic highway, another takes the direct interstate. And the definition makes that super clear. The learning goals, still the same for everybody. But the how, the way they learn, that's what changes. The teacher adapts the method not for individuals, but for groups of students based on how they learn best. And you can see that shift right here, from focusing on an individual to focusing on groups of learners. The teacher is still the one adapting everything, and the learners are reliant on them for guidance. But look at the bottom, a really key change. The assessment is now assessment for learning. This isn't just a final grade, it's a tool the teacher uses during the process to help everyone move forward. So with differentiation, it's all about changing the how. The learner is still pretty passive, they're just in a group now. The assessment is a bit more dynamic for sure, but it's still a teacher-centered model. The teacher is making all the big decisions about which path to take. And now we get to personalization. And this is the one that completely changes the game. Back to our GPS. This time, the teacher doesn't just assign a route. The teacher hands the map to the learner. And the learner gets a real say in choosing not only the best route for them, but maybe even helping to decide on the final destination itself. Oh man, this definition is so important. Personalization takes everything from the other two, pace and method, but then it adds this hugely critical new layer. It's tailored to the learner's specific interests. And this is the only model where the learning objectives themselves, the actual goals, can be different from one student to the next. That is a massive, massive shift. And this chart just says it all. The language here is all about student power. It starts with the learner. They have voice and choice. They actively participate and select their own tools. And look at this. The foundation isn't seat time anymore. It's about demonstrating mastery. And with that comes a totally new kind of assessment as learning. So the most important thing to get about personalization is that it's about a transfer of ownership. The focus is now on the students' unique passions and goals. They're not just a passenger anymore, they're an active co-designer of their own education. And the assessment, that becomes a tool for them to reflect on their own journey. This, finally, is our learner-centered model. Okay, we've looked at all three of them on their own. Now, let's do the fun part. Let's put them right next to each other, head to head. This is where the differences just become crystal clear. Let's just go right across the rows here. Where does it start? Personalization starts with the learner. The others start with what the teacher is providing. What's the learner's role? Active co-designer versus a passive participant. And what about the goals? They can be totally different for each student in personalization, but they're the same for everyone else in the other two. I mean, the contrast couldn't be more stark. This right here, this is really the heart of it. On one side, you have personalization, where students are active. They have a real voice in a real choice. And on the other side, you have differentiation and individualization, where instruction is something that is delivered to students who don't really have a say in how it's designed. And the whole idea of what an assessment is just gets turned on its head. Think of it like this. Assessment of learning is like the final exam. It's a judgment. Assessment for learning is like a coach giving you feedback during practice to help you get better. But assessment as learning, that's you as the learner, looking in the mirror, monitoring your own progress, and becoming your own coach. So, okay, we've got the definitions down, but why are we even having this conversation? Why do these buzzwords matter so much? Well, because this isn't just about a few words. This is about a deep, fundamental shift in what we think school is even for. And this is the whole shebang right here. For over 100 years, school success has been measured by something called the Carnegie Unit, which is just a fancy way of saying seat time. How long were you in class? Personalization throws that whole idea out the window. It says, who cares how long it took? What matters is what you can actually do. What skills have you mastered? And that matters, because the world outside of school doesn't reward you for sitting in a chair. It rewards you for what you can contribute. And this isn't just some vague, nice idea. Groups like iNicole have actually laid out a roadmap for how to do this. It's a world where you move on when you've mastered something, where you're empowered by knowing exactly what the goal is, and where tests aren't scary things, but positive experiences that are all about applying what you know and creating new things. Ultimately, this whole shift is about preparing learners for the 21st century. I mean, we live in a world that's changing constantly. The ability for someone to set their own goals, to track their own progress, and to direct their own learning, that's not just a nice little bonus skill anymore. It is absolutely essential for their future. Which really leaves us with this one big, exciting question to think about. If students are no longer just passengers, if they're actually co-designers of their own educational journey, what does the classroom of the future even look like? The possibilities are just starting to open up. Thanks so much for watching.